Recent research reveals that more than 45% of immigrant children who entered the country before turning 13 could sustain their fluency in their original language. However, that proficiency significantly drops to less than 10% among the third generation. As we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, one local doctor and an award-winning artist are actively making efforts to rejuvenate the Spanish language and the culture with their new children's book, Spanish is the Language of My Family. Joining us now, John Parra and Dr. Michael Genhart, who are creators of the book. Dr. John, thank you very much for coming. This is exactly my family. I'm second generation. I didn't know how to speak English until I was about 5 or so, 6, because I had to learn. But my kids are not in that. Are the third generation you speak of. My kids grew up speaking English. They speak Spanish too, but it's a little different when, you know, they're doing both languages at once. Why is it so important, for example, for my kids to keep speaking Spanish?
Well, I think representation matters. I think this book was inspired actually by stories my mom told me when she was a little girl. Spanish was her first language as well, Mexican-American, Southern California. And at the time, the rule, the law was English only in public schools. And kids who spoke Spanish in schools were shamed and punished quite harshly, especially in the American Southwest, from California to Texas. And they were spanked for every Spanish word that they spoke. They were told that their language was dirty and ugly. And so there was a lot of harm done. And so I wanted to reclaim Spanish and celebrate it through this book. So this is a story of a little boy, Manolo, who enters the National Spanish Spelling Bee, which is a real thing. David Briceño started the spelling bee in New Mexico in 2011 because his parents went through the same shaming, and he wanted to celebrate Spanish as well. Anyway, Manolo in this story asked his grandmother to help him study, and she does. And I tell her story, the story of my mom and generations before her and after her, through the spelling words.
I want to ask you, John, about, you know, I've seen the illustrations and they are, you know, I like how you have illustrations that clearly makes it that these are brown children.
Correct.
These are not, you know, there's no doubt about it, the way you illustrate the book. How did you two work together to bring the starting concept to what this is now, to, you know, to the end?
Well, I received Michael's manuscript through my publisher and my agent, and when I read the story, I mean, it felt very close to hit home, first of all, because this affected my family as well. But I also wanted to shine a light on these kids that were learning about Spanish and learning how to spell in Spanish, and I thought that was fascinating. I love when we're talking about young kids and learning and education. And because I express myself visually, I wanted to portray a cast of characters, but all the contestants also, there's sort of different shades of colors there. It's not just one monotone, but it does primarily affect, especially Spanish speakers, you know, sort of the complexion of a Latino or Latinx or Latina person, and wanted that to be represented.
I want to ask you each a question, if you can give me short answers, because I want to get to the root of this, which is, why is it important for these families to make an effort to continue this language in their families? Because you can get by with English. English is the language of the world. If you know English, you can go anywhere. Why is it important to keep speaking Spanish? I'll start with you.
Well, I think it's important because, A, you remember in your community, your culture, it's part of who we are. You know, English is spoken in many parts of the world, but also Spanish is. Spanish is a very, especially in the Americas. And I think to have that as an asset, or to be a part of and be proud of who you are and representative of who you are, I think is important. And you feel it in your heart that's part. It's more than a language. It's more about who you are and where you come from, and it has a history behind it.
I agree with that.
I will echo, it is about pride. It's about identity, right? Especially in this context where when this happened, these kids were harmed and dignity and respect were taken from them. So I wanted to reclaim that again, and so continuing the language is about reclaiming identity and dignity and respect.
Well, thank you both. Yeah, I will say something that you didn't say because it didn't come to your mind, but there are certain thoughts and feelings that you can only say in your language. You know that when
That's
you can
right.
speak.
That's right.
So you tried to translate it, but it doesn't quite come out. So that's also another thing. I really appreciate this book. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
All right, and that is Dr. Michael Genhardt and John Parra here joining us. And the book is called Spanish is the Language of My Family. Coming up.